Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration program at Oxford College of Emory University. My name is Lynn Pace, and I'm the college chaplain here at Oxford. This annual program has been happening for at least 30 plus years, and it is traditionally hosted out of the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, the chaplain's office, now shared also with our student coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm really thrilled that you're here joining us tonight. I'm grateful for your participation in this program, and I hope you enjoy everything we have in store for you. I'm also thankful for our participants tonight, Hannah Bodis, our current sophomore student, Mr. Maury Allums, who is the music director in the Office of Spiritual and Religious Life on the Atlanta campus of Emory University. Oxford College's Dean Douglas Hicks is joining us tonight, and then the Reverend Kim Jackson is our keynote speaker, and she will be introduced later in the program. I'm also thankful to folks behind the scenes, and they know who they are, but it takes many hands to do this when we're in person, as well as on Zoom and in our webinars. And so I'm grateful to them, including Matt Smith tonight for running our tech for this event. Tonight's program is a little scaled down from what we would have done. We were hoping to be in person, but Omicron and COVID changed our plans. And so to keep folks safe, but to be able to do this event, we are now on Zoom. And so a scaled down version makes it a little bit more accessible in this format on Zoom, but we think that you will enjoy it. And we hope that you'll take a lot of meaning from tonight and that it will call you to action in your own way in your corner of the world. We're also glad that tonight's event is part of Emory University's King Week, also an event that's been going a long time at Emory and a week full of activities. I will put a link in the chat in a moment to the website for King Week at Emory and hope you'll take a look at that and maybe attend one of the events that's left on the calendar soon. I think that's all that I have for you this evening. I will come back and introduce our keynote speaker, but again, we're really glad you're here to join us on this wonderful occasion where we celebrate Dr. King, Dr. King's legacy, and again, our own call to action wherever we may be in the world. Let me introduce to you now Hannah Bodis, a local resident of Newton County, a sophomore, and our current Martin Luther King Jr. Scholar at Oxford College. Hannah?
Good evening. Thank you to each and every one of you for being present here today in a setting that, although may feel physically distant, ultimately ensures our safety amid this COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we join here to celebrate and memorialize the great civil rights leader, Nobel Peace Prize winner, father, minister, orator, and so many other recognized honorable titles, the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My name is Hannah Bodis, the 2020 MLK Scholar, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to welcome you all to today's event. I live locally in the Covington, Georgia area, and I'm a sophomore at Oxford College studying psychology and minoring in women, gender, and sexuality studies on the pre-med track where I plan to pursue psychiatry. In the name of Martin Luther King Jr., for over 30 years, the Newton County and Oxford community has funded a 4-year all-tuition scholarship to attend Oxford College and Emory University and is annually awarded to a high school senior in Newton County based on financial need and merit. Standing as the most recent MLK scholarship recipient, I can say this award is life-changing for the best by allowing underrepresented backgrounds like myself equal opportunities to pursue higher education, nonetheless at a prestigious institute. Truly a Dr. King dream. Oxford College has hosted this MLK Day celebration for more than 3 decades now. We're glad to welcome students, faculty, staff of Oxford College, other members of the Emory community, and members of the local community and beyond. Tonight's event will include music by Mr. Maury Allums, remarks from Dean Doug Hicks, and a keynote address by the Reverend Kim Jackson, who will be introduced later. Honoring Dr. King and taking time to remember his life work, I believe, is the least we could do to say thank you for his courageous leadership to peacefully organize and enact social change to better the lives of the underserved and mistreated African American community here in the United States. His work, which ultimately led to the significant passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, has left a commendable impact on the motioning the pursuits for equal human rights forward throughout the years in a fight that is still taking place in modern times. Citation of Dr. King's work demonstrates valuing his considerable leadership quality and possessing traits such as altruism, where he fought with integrity for what he believed in service for the greater good. Also, in commencement of the complex, grueling, laborious, and frustrating activist work he did, he sets an example of protesting peacefully, where such goals of systemic reconstruction is able to be achieved without violence. One of my favorite quotes by Dr. King highlights this latter quality, which I believe should be taken into greater consideration to avoid incidents like the insurrection of January 6th last year from being the respectable representation of the First Amendment right of peaceful assembly. This quote is very popular within his Loving Your Enemy speech, I'm sure you all know. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Again, welcome and thank you all for participating in the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's event. Now, Mr. Mari Alams, the music director of the Office of Spiritual and Religious Life at the Atlanta Emory campus, will be leading us in the performance of some special music. Thank you.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on our way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land, true to our God, true to our native land, our native land.
And the people said, amen. Absolutely beautiful, Maury. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and for your music. And thanks to you, Hannah, for your opening words. We appreciate both of you. I have the privilege of introducing our speaker for tonight. The Reverend Kim Jackson serves as Senator for Georgia State Senate District 41, representing portions of DeKalb and Gwinnett counties. Kim works every day to build a safer, fairer, and more prosperous Georgia and bring the diverse voices of her district to the Capitol, voices of immigrants, refugees, and people living on the margins. An Episcopal priest from the rural South, Kim made Georgia her home over a decade ago. After graduating from Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, Kim volunteered as an EMT and led her colleagues at Emory's Candler School of Theology to be an advocate for criminal justice reform in Georgia. Upon receiving her Master of Divinity, Kim commenced her vocation as an Episcopal priest, and over the past 10 years of ministry, has served as a college chaplain, a nationally renowned consultant and preacher, and a parish priest. As the vicar of the Church of the Common Ground, Kim co-creates church with people who are experiencing homelessness in downtown Atlanta. Once I got to know Kim in the last decade or so and of her work, when we started talking about our own rural upbringing in rural South Carolina, we discovered that we both attended the same high school. I was there a few years before she was, but I'm really proud to share that in common with Kim Jackson. She and her spouse live on a small urban farm in Stone Mountain with goats, ducks, honeybees, and chickens. And I love that that's the last line of her bio. And that is where I will turn it over to you, Kim Jackson. Thank you for joining us tonight and welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. It's good to be with a homeboy on this day, and special gratitude and words of thanks to Maury. It's always so good to hear your music, to be in your presence. And Hannah, thank you so much for such a beautiful welcome. So based on my introduction, you might have figured out that I've spent a lot of my life involved in some type of social justice work. Or to borrow from the late John Lewis, I've spent some time getting in some good trouble. So I simply want to tell you all a little bit about how I've grown to become the advocate, the priest, and the politician that I am today, in hopes that perhaps my story might spark something within you. When I was 17 years old, I began my freshman year at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. It was a county that at the time outright refused to make King Day a holiday. Now, of course, as a freshman safely nestled in the cocoon of the college bubble, I had no idea that there was a multi-decade struggle occurring in Greenville County about Martin Luther King Day. But it was one classroom assignment that has ultimately forever changed my life. Second semester of my freshman year, around this very time, in an exploration of ministries class, the chaplain, Jim Pitts, assigned me the job of shadowing a local pastor in downtown Greenville. Included in that assignment was, of course, some long readings that I have long forgotten, and a final paper that detailed my learnings. But most of all, it meant journeying alongside Reverend Richburg. While following along him, I learned about the community's movement to get Greenville County to make Martin Luther King Day an official holiday. I accompanied Reverend Richburg to these county council meetings where I saw firsthand what it looked like for a pastor to engage politically in social justice. I learned what it means to bring theology to the public square, and I understood for the first time the importance of citizen engagement with local officials. I vividly remember also feeling so scared, so afraid as we walked past a throng of angry protesters waving Confederate flags in front of the county council office. From that, I learned about courage. You see, courage is not about the absence of fear, but courage means being afraid and still doing the thing. It was under the mentorship of Chaplain Pitts and Caesar Richburg, that pastor, something inside of me was unlocked. This thirst for justice, a hunger for community organizing, and a growing clarity that my faith and that my sense of integrity compelled me to engage in public policy. Something was unlocked inside of me that compelled me to stand up for righteousness and to stand up for justice. And thus, when I was invited to join in a march through downtown Greenville, South Carolina, I gave an enthusiastic yes. But let me pause here and just make this note. Now that I'm a state senator, I think people see me as this well-accomplished person who knows how to do a whole lot of things. Indeed, people see me in this way, so much so that they invite me to speak at fancy events like this. And yes, certainly by now, almost 19 years later, I do have some polish and finesse. But I want to be clear that when I started this work, I did not know how to do what I was doing. I was a freshman living in the dorms who had to borrow a car in order to buy supplies to go on this march. Before that day, I'd never even been to a protest before. And I'd certainly never convinced a bunch of people to join me. Before that day, never had I made public comments in a county council meeting or at a rally, and I'd certainly never spoken in front of thousands of people. I didn't know. I didn't know how to do exactly what I was doing, but I knew that I had to do something. I knew that I had to stand up for righteousness. I knew I had to stand up for peace and justice. And so there I was at 17 years old, playing my small part in what was a decades-long struggle that began long before I arrived in Greenville, and a struggle that continued long after I was gone. So my question for you all today, whether you're a freshman or sophomore, a professor, retiree, or staff, what part do you play? What part will you play as we all do this work to bend the long arc of the moral universe towards justice? I'll ask that again. What is your role? What part will you play as we all work to bend this long arc of the universe, of the moral universe, towards justice? You know, Dr. King, he had some dreams for this country that I still believe serve as a blueprint for what kind of world we can build together. Certainly the fact that I am sitting in elected office, the state senator representing Stone Mountain, birthplace of the modern Klan, Undoubtedly, my presence as a Black queer woman in the Georgia State Legislature is a sign that we've begun the process that King envisioned for us since he gave that famous speech where he dreamed that freedom would ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. But Dr. King's dreams, they didn't stop. They didn't stop at mere Black representation in offices of power. He didn't end with simple desegregation. Dr. King dreamed of a world house of peace, a world house where poverty no longer exists, a world house where workers have the right to fair wages and the ability to collectively organize. King dreamed of a world where people had access to the ballot box and access to affordable housing too. He dreamed of a day when the two Americas, one for white people and one for Black people, would be made whole. And he dreamed of a world that studied war no more. These are lofty dreams, high dreams that demand action on multiple layers of government. But one of the greatest lessons that I learned during my time at college is that none of us has to do it all. In fact, none of us can do it all. But instead, we are invited to listen to our neighbors, to listen to one another, and to do the thing that's right in front of you. For me, it started with a classroom assignment that plopped me right down in the middle of a King holiday struggle. Later in life, my role became the work of tending to Atlanta's unhoused population and trying to care well for the immigrants and refugees who are literally my neighbors. Friends, what part do you play? Will you help disrupt the school to prison pipelines that criminalize and enslave our youth? Will you amplify the call for economic justice and make sure that the workers on your own campus have fair and safe working conditions and wages? Perhaps you need to leave the safety of the college bubble and get involved in Covington and Oxford and the Newton County community. Help register people to vote, get IDs in the hands of the people who need them. You know, friends, I don't know what your role will be, but I do know for sure that if we are going to bend this arc of the moral universe towards justice, then we have to do it together and we have to do something. Again, you don't have to know exactly how to do what you're doing. You might have to borrow somebody's car, in fact. But if we're to honor the legacy, the hopes and the dreams of Dr. King, then we have to do something. And so I invite you to find a way to play your small part in our collective work. Dear friends, as you go forth, be willing to follow in King's steps by standing up for righteousness, stand up for justice, and stand up for peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Reverend Jackson. It's so good to be with you again. One of the things we said at the start of this program, before everyone came on, is we just wanted to be led in where we were to go with this. And the song that I planned, we're going to change it. It goes like this. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. That was one of the songs they were doing during the civil rights movement. But it's something a little more familiar to you. It goes like this. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be a friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long, and I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call me. You need a friend, call me. Oh, come on now, call me. When you need a friend, call me. And we say, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Thank you so much, Maury. I'm so grateful for your gifts of music, and to you, Reverend Jackson, for your gifts of the word and action. And so, good evening, everybody. I'm Doug Hicks, Dean of Oxford College, and we want to thank you all for joining to be part of this celebration of the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Just grateful for this group of folks who have gathered and a chance to share a few reflections about Oxford College on this evening. Reverend Jackson talked about college journeys, and that's a great theme, of course, for our evening at Oxford College. Hannah Bodis is on that journey, and as an MLK scholar is a super talented person, a student from the local area who is making the most of her college education, and thank you. And Kim, thank you for sharing your journey of college and how your mentor, the chaplain, and your work there helped you to work for social justice. It struck me as you were speaking that Dr. King, Martin Luther King, was not allowed to go to college at Emory, at Oxford or the Atlanta campus. And that's something, a part of the history that we must remember this evening as well. Of course, he made the most of his college education right here in the Atlanta area at Morehouse, and then went up to Boston University and got his PhD, and then went over to Montgomery. And he was a very, very young man in his mid-20s when he became the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott. All of that happened from his college journey, and he was learning to move along and to help a movement as a young person. And it struck me in my own life, my experience of professors and the chaplain and the administrators at my college who changed my life by calling me, by asking me, what will you do for social justice? What will you do to change the world and make it a better place, to bend the arc of the world, of the moral universe towards justice? These are the important questions that we ask as a community. And at Oxford College, we're asking about what kind of future we can have by also asking at this very moment, how are we going to acknowledge our history and where we've been? I'm honored to be part of Emory University's efforts to name that history. The honorable parts of it about training ministry, training students for ministry, about helping people to make the world a more compassionate place through healing, through the law, through theology, through medicine and nursing care. But we also remember that the Oxford campus, where Emory was begun, was constructed largely by the labor of enslaved persons, that all of the early professors and presidents and trustees of Emory owned enslaved persons. And that is a fundamental part of our story, and we would not have this beautiful campus without the labor of those in this area who were enslaved. And so we need to name that history, and the history into the 20th century of Jim Crow segregation, and of the ways that made our first Oxford College graduate after the death of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. These are important parts of our story that we need to tell each other and to understand what difference that makes for where we are now and where we're going. And so I want to encourage you all, whether you're a faculty, staff, student, or community member, to join together with the work of the Twin Memorials Working Group that is working at the charge of President Fenves to build memorials to enslaved labor both on the Oxford campus and on the Atlanta campus. And so this evening, I'd ask you to join in this work. And February 3rd and 4th, there will be community engagement conversations on the Oxford campus and in the local Oxford community at Mount Zion Church to invite your input for concepts for a memorial. Now, some will say for memorial that we may just be being performative by looking backward or acknowledging the past. But our vision with my friend and colleague, Reverend Dr. Greg Ellison, and the Twin Memorials Working Group is that we will think about the future, that these memorials will be educational. They will be resources for us to create those conversations that Reverend Jackson talked about, that Hannah mentioned, the work that we can do as this community called Oxford and called Emory. And so the memorials are a part of the wider educational programming to understand the world, to understand injustice so that we may create justice, to understand inequality so we might work for more equality. And those are the kind of projects that we need to do together. What role will you play? Thank you, Reverend Jackson, for raising that question. It's a great one for all of us. I would also encourage you students to reach out to mentors, to faculty and staff, and even administrators who have also worked to understand our efforts, our callings as part of that work for a more beloved community and a more just campus and a more just society. So please reach out to us as collaborators so that we might do this work together as one community. It's a strange time. We're living in COVID and we feel apart. We might even feel alienated or alone from being on Zoom screens. But this too will change. We are excited to be back together as a community in 2 weeks. And I encourage you to take part not only in the Twin Memorials planning, but in a number of efforts for social engagement, for social activism, and making Oxford the best community partner that it can be, the best educational institution for our students, and the most equitable and inclusive campus possible. We have great partners in Atlanta at Emory. We have great community partners in Covington and in Oxford. And I am honored to be part of the journey with you. And thank you as we celebrate the life of Dr. King. I thank you for your part in our community. May we feel inclusive and even work towards a beloved community. And so now I charge you as we wrap up this event to go out into the world in peace. This service has ended. May your service to the world resume. May you work for righteousness and peace and justice, as Reverend Jackson challenged us tonight to do, as Reverend Dr. King has challenged us to do in our lives. Thank you very much for joining tonight and have a great evening.